The Woman of the West Wing, in context of 1990s American politics. The West Wing is an American political drama television series created by Aaron Sorkin. The series aired on 1999 to 2006 on NBC. The series follows the fictitious Democratic administration of President Josiah Bartlett, who is played by Martin Sheen. Sheen is joined by an ensemble cast featuring Rob Lowe, Allison Janney, Richard Schiff, Bradley Whitford, Stockard Channing, Kristen Chenoweth, and many others. The West Wing is a highly praised television series and has received 2 Peabody Awards, 3 Golden Globes, and 26 Primetime Emmy Awards. For this video essay, I will be focusing on the character of CJ Craig, who is played by Allison Janney. CJ is smart, assertive, and known for her quick wit and tit-for-tat with her male coworkers, who often underestimate and patronize her. Before joining the Bartlett administration, CJ worked for Emily's List, a political group that seeks to elect women. Following that, she worked for Triton Day, a PR firm and a public relations company, where she covered film and TV and was ultimately fired. CJ arrives at her California home to see Toby Ziegler, who is currently just a staffer on the Bartlett team, but eventually becomes the communications director for the Bartlett administration. Toby informs CJ that Bartlett is impressed with her work and wants to recruit her to the campaign to be the White House press secretary. However, he later admits that Bartlett has never heard of CJ, and it was Leo McGarry, Bartlett's close friend and future chief of staff, who wanted to hire her. CJ is hesitant to accept the job, as it pays significantly lower than the former. She questions whether she has enough experience to be able to take on this incredibly challenging role.
Come join the campaign.
How much does it pay?
How much were you making before?
$550,000 a year.
This pays $600 a week.
So this is less.
Yes.
Toby, does he know I've only ever worked statewide? Does he know I've never worked on a national campaign?
Yes. It's graduation day.
You really think I can do this?
As White House press secretary, CJ is well-spoken, effortlessly reigns in the White House press corps, while at the same time maintaining good relationships with all the reporters. CJ is initially portrayed on the show as politically inept. However, over time, CJ becomes one of the smartest political operatives in the administration, often outperforming her male coworkers and standing up to members of Congress and even military officials. CJ shows signs of romantic interest in one of the White House reporters, Danny Concanon, which causes some friction within her staff. Above all of this, however, CJ is most notorious for her perfect lip sync of The Jackal by Ronnie Jordan.
They call me the Jackal.
Video essay, I will be arguing that the character of CJ Craig in The West Wing was inspired by the political climate of the 90s, and her character breaks the mold by being a strong female role model in this male-dominated field of politics.
Part 1. CJ and Women in Politics. The 1990s was a big decade for American politics, and a lot of that was reflected not only in The West Wing as a whole, but in CJ as a character specifically. 1992 was deemed the Year of the Woman. 108 women were elected to the U.S. House of Representatives and 11 to the Senate. Many of these women were partly motivated to run in response to Clarence Thomas's appointment to the court, as despite the testimony of Anita Hill, he was still confirmed by a narrow Senate majority of 52 to 48. In addition to the record number of women elected to Congress, more women were given prestigious roles in the executive branch. Following President Clinton's election in 1993, he appointed 3 women to positions within his cabinet. In addition to the progress women were making in politics through Congress and the executive branch, another woman was about to forever change how we see the role of the First Lady. Hillary Clinton was known for her activism during her tenure as First Lady and was the first presidential spouse to have an office within the West Wing. HRC worked on political campaigns, testified before Congress regarding acts of legislation, and worked closely with congressional staffers on many agenda items. Hillary stood out from other First Ladies as she specifically not asked as she specifically asked not to be judged solely upon her partnership with the president, but rather on her own performance. HRC broke the mold and wanted to use her role as First Lady to make a lasting impact on American politics. She found herself in the middle of a court case about overstepping her role, which ruled that the First Lady was a government employee. This ruling effectively advanced the office of the First Lady as an institution. Hillary was able to challenge stereotypical ideas of what the First Lady should be about and challenge traditional public opinion about the presidential spouse. From a gender analysis perspective, HRC really changed the game and was a transformative force for women in politics. The political context of the 90s regarding the record number of women elected to Congress, with women taking on an increased role in the presidential cabinet, and HRC transforming the office of the First Lady, all set the stage for the creation of the West Wing and the character of CJ Craig specifically. CJ faces many uphill battles due to her being a woman in politics, as she is often underestimated and criticized. In one episode, the White House senior staff choose to keep CJ in the dark about troop movement in the Indo-Pakistani conflict, as they think she will not be able to lie to the press if she went into the briefing knowing the full information. In this scene, CJ walks in on the rest of the White House senior staff having a meeting without her.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm sorry, Charlie and Mrs. Lanningham stepped away. Should I go back and wait in the...
No, we were just breaking up.
Can I tell the room there's a full lid?
Yeah.
Okay.
CJ goes into the briefing with no knowledge of the troop movement, flat out denies it, and then later must retract her statement, which causes damage to her reputation and relationship with the press.
And with that, the lid is full. You can all go home.
CJ,
Bruce.
I've got a source at the Pentagon who says in the last few hours there's been massive troop movement on the Kashmir border.
In the last few hours,
Yeah.
I think you need to get a new source at the Pentagon, Bruce.
There's nothing to it.
What kind of troop movement?
Something like 300,000 troops and a few warships.
300,000 troops.
Yeah.
I think someone's having a little fun with you, Bruce.
You sure?
I was just in the Oval Office 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
They choose to lie to CJ as they think she is too close with the press, and okay, no. CJ goes into the briefing with no knowledge of the troop movement, flat out denies it, and then later must retract her statement, which causes damage to her reputation and relationship with the press. They choose to lie to her as they think CJ is too close with the press, specifically Danny Kincannon. The White House senior staff learn from this and start to trust CJ with sensitive information throughout the show, but it is highly unlikely that if a man were in her position, they would feel the need to lie to him because they question his relationship with the press and his ability to do his job to the full extent.
This happened last night?
Yeah.
That's what you all were talking about when I walked into the Oval Office?
I'm sorry, CJ.
You told me the lid was on?
You have to expect that sometimes.
I got the question, Leo. A guy had a Pentagon source. I denied it. I called it ridiculous.
We know.
Is it 300,000 troops?
Yeah.
A couple of destroyers?
And 4 CVEs.
A guy hit it right on the button. I mean, they think you lied to me, which is what happened. They don't know me. I'm from nowhere. I was just starting to get credible. I was just starting to get their respect. You know how long it's going to take me to get it back?
There's a concern.
Don't ask CJ. She doesn't know anything.
There is a concern that you're too friendly with the press.
Really?
We know it's...
In addition to the challenges CJ faces as a woman in politics, throughout the show, the character of CJ highlights the importance of having more women in this male-dominated field of politics, as she brings new perspectives to the issues that none of the men on her staff would bring. In a season 3 episode, the Bartlett administration is working on an arms deal with Kumar, which is a fictitious country, though it is argued to represent Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. CJ is the only White House senior staffer to question the deal due to the abysmal state of women's rights in Kumar.
You better be briefed on the arms sale to Kumar because the Pentagon leaked it.
Kumar?
Yeah.
In the Gulf?
Is there another one?
No. We lease an airbase in Kumar. It's a 10-year lease and it's up, and they won't renew without an arms package. You writing this down?
No. When did we make an arms deal with Kumar?
None of her male coworkers are affected by the potential arms deal as CJ, as she empathizes with how women are treated in Kumar. In a later scene, CJ voices her concerns with Nancy McNally, the National Security Advisor.
They hate women. The only reason reason they keep Kumari women alive is to make more Kumari men.
So what do you want me to do about it?
How about instead of suggesting that we sell the guns to them, suggesting that we shoot the guns at them? And by the way, not to change the subject, but how are we supposed to have any moral credibility when we talk about gun control and making sure the guns don't get in the hands of the wrong people? God, Nancy, what?
These scenes exemplify the different perspectives to issues CJ brings to the table as one of the only women in the White House senior staff, and how the men on her staff do not even question the morality of the arms deal. The president's chief of staff, Leo McGarry, resigns after a disagreement with the president regarding sending troops to the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The White House senior staff is abuzz with who President Bartlett will choose to be his successor. The West Wing is shocked to hear that the president chose CJ for the position. Initially, she is met with critique from both inside and outside the West Wing regarding her lack of relevant experience to take on this major role. In her first couple of days as chief of staff, the transition proves difficult, and CJ encounters some problems with the promotion and new job responsibilities.
CIA briefer's on his way. Security will be by for a palm print and an eye scan. President's got Treasury in 10 minutes. You're on the call. EPA's waiting for feedback on the clean air markup. Armed Forces is coming to talk about a budget boost for the peacekeeping tour because they forgot to factor in food for the troops.
And this gets us to
8:45.
I'm not commenting.
The men on her staff are no help and add to CJ's stress.
This is my letter of resignation to the president. I don't want to pile on, but working for one of my closest friends is, I think, not going to bring out my best.
Gosh, you can't.
I'm sorry to barge in.
Mr. President, can I have just a
I'll
minute?
make this quick. I don't know if I'm comfortable working this closely with a woman. Maybe it's time for me to call it a day. Give the VP a chance to steer the ship. You're weak.
One of the biggest problems CJ faces is being underestimated and invalidated by members of the administration and others who work with the White House. In this scene, the Secretary of Defense circumvents CJ's authority by avoiding her and going to the president directly.
Get him out of there.
Really?
Pull the president, take him to the mural room, tell him he's late for his 1:15.
He doesn't have a 115.
Make one up.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Secretary Hutchinson.
Congratulations, woman of the hour.
Thank you.
Later in the episode, CJ has her first meeting in the Situation Room and she is visibly overwhelmed. CJ appears disheveled and the Secretary of Defense speaks over her and shuts her down. Later in
It'd be nice to know we're not buying a lump of clay.
We'll test it.
Give the president a report on domestic storage capacity.
Hang on, I'm not sure we're ready.
He asked me for it. We done?
the episode, Toby and CJ have a disagreement and question her authority. All of this leads to CJ to go visit Leo McGarry, who has been hospitalized following his resignation as chief of staff. CJ is visibly upset and questions her ability to do her job. After some advice from Leo's secretary, Margaret, CJ starts to feel better about her ability to do the job and gain some confidence. CJ finds her stride by the end of the episode, and things are looking up for CJ as she starts to prove to others and herself that she can be proficient in this role.
I'd like to sit with the president.
Recommendations on the project will flow through this office, and I will keep the president up to speed. Let's look at the breakdown.
I'm sure this is all well thought out.
Thank
but,
you.
The only viable option right now
Mr.
is to
Secretary.
secure the material where it is.
Mr. Secretary.
Because operationally and financially, we don't have the resources.
Miles, we will find the money. You will not. Though DoD will likely be saddled with most of the operational responsibility, you will not be saddled with the cost. You're about to send 18,000 troops into the Middle East, and we can safely assume that's just the beginning. You're overextended. We will find the money elsewhere. Let's look at the breakdown on page 3.
CJ as a character really breaks the mold for what it means to be a woman in politics and is a success story of someone overcoming misogyny, constantly being underestimated, and speaking up on important issues when no one else will. Given the political context of the 90s, with 1992 being proclaimed the Year of the Woman, and HRC's political advances as First Lady, there is no question that CJ Craig was inspired by the women in politics of the time the show was created, and her character reflects those ideals. Part 2, CJ reflecting political issues of the 90s. In addition to the character of CJ Craig being created through the political context of the 90s regarding women in politics, CJ as a character reflects policy issues that were in the spotlight in the 90s. The 90s was a big year for gay rights, as just a few years prior, in 1986, the court considered a case regarding a Georgia statute and ruled on whether a person had a constitutional right to engage in homosexual sex. The court found that homosexual sodomy, as it was referred to, was criminal under American common law. While this law was not actively enforced, it was still on the books all throughout the 90s and held significant symbolic meaning to the LGBTQ community. This case was not overturned until 2003 with a ruling in Lawrence v. Texas, which held that intimate consensual sexual conduct was protected by the 14th Amendment. This case was a breakthrough for gay rights and helped set the stage for Obergefell v. Hodges, which recognized same-sex marriage as a fundamental right under the U.S. Constitution in 2015. In the West Wing, after CJ is appointed Chief of Staff, her sexuality is under debate by the public and the media. This is a common practice where strong, independent women are questioned about their sexuality, especially in the male-dominated field of politics.
Are you a homosexual? You know what? I spent the last 14 hours being snickered at by United States senators, being ostracized on the World Wide Web, having my own colleagues question my ability to do my job. And I let it get to me. So I don't think it really matters whether I'm gay or straight, or just the best damn women's basketball player in Ohio Valley history. No one should be treated this way.
This scene exemplifies how the character of CJ Craig was inspired by the policy agenda of the 90s. As discussed, gay rights was a substantial part of the legal and political agenda of the 90s, and that is reflected in its inclusion in the writing and plot of the show. CJ Craig takes a stand on the issues and states that whether gay or straight, no one should be treated as she has been treated. In addition, this scene shows the different standards in the conversations that women in the public eye are subject to, especially in the male-dominated field of politics. Another policy issue of the 90s that was reflected in the West Wing and CJ Craig was abortion politics. In 1990, pro-choice mentality was growing among American politicians. In the 1990 race for governor of California, both Senator Pete Wilson and then former mayor of San Francisco, Dianne Feinstein, both emphasized their pro-choice voting records in an effort to win the election. At the national level, Bill Clinton aggressively advocated for his pro-choice beliefs and criticized the way Reagan and Bush appointments to the court threatened Roe v. Wade. In a season 2 episode, the White House is negotiating a budget deal, and in order to gain something they wanted, they had to concede to a provision in the bill that would force healthcare providers to give pregnant women information about adoption on a, quote, equal basis with all other courses of action, end quote. Obviously, the other courses of action is referring to abortion. CJ warns that the National Organization for Women is going to hate that, but ultimately agrees to help smooth things over with them.
How do we get it? By agreeing to a provision that would require healthcare staff to give pregnant women information about adoption on an equal basis with all other courses of action.
National Organization for Women's gonna hate that.
I know.
Women seeking abortion should not be required by law to be lectured at.
Yeah, but you're gonna help me out there, right?
Yes, I will. I will once again betray the sisterhood. I saw you, and you roll your eyes.
This scene exemplifies two things. One being that the abortion politics of the time the show was created informed the West Wing and CJ Craig specifically. And second, it shows CJ standing up for women's reproductive rights in a room full of men. When Joss was explaining the concession, no one else in the room brought up the effect that would have on women and women's perception of the administration. This scene perfectly encapsulates CJ's outspoken nature and how she breaks the mold by being a strong female role model in politics. In sum, the character of CJ Craig in the West Wing was inspired by the political climate of the 90s, and CJ breaks the mold by being a strong female role model in politics. The 90s saw more prominence of women in American politics, with 1992 being deemed Year of the Woman due to the increased number of women elected to Congress. Hillary Clinton also forever changed the institution of the First Lady, and both of these developments are reflected in the character of CJ Craig. The political issues of the 90s were also reflected in the West Wing, and C.J. Craig specifically regarding gay rights, international women's rights, and abortion rights.